Hey guys, so today I'm going to be filming a video on the illness that I was diagnosed with about over a year ago.
First things first, I'm really tired because I used up like 90% of my energy just getting ready for this video. And also, my throat is kind of like swollen and stuff right now because my thyroid is really big and I'm getting blood work and stuff for that to figure out what's going on with it.
There's a few reasons why I want to make this video. The first reason is to help raise awareness for this illness because so many people are misdiagnosed. They're told that they just don't have anything wrong with them when they actually have Lyme disease, and it's something that can be treated. But many people go misdiagnosed and there's not any good tests for Lyme disease. A lot of people don't believe that there's such thing as chronic Lyme disease, and it is a real thing, and people need to realize that and accept it so that people can get help and they can get better. So many people are suffering and they're not getting the help that they need, and it's so expensive to get treatment for it. The second reason I want to make this video is for the people who have Lyme disease, or not even Lyme disease, but any chronic illness, and who feel really alone right now and like feel like no one can relate to them, because I've been there. And I just want you to know that you're not alone, that this is a real illness, what you're feeling is real, and that people do relate to you.
If you guys ever need anyone to talk to, you can go ahead and go to my Instagram, which is goldenlyo, and leave me a DM on there and I'll answer it, or you can just leave a comment or something and I'll be sure to answer it so that you have someone to talk to.
It all started back when I was like 9 or 10. And that's when I first started getting symptoms. I would have chest pain, stomach pain, a lot of different stomach problems. And they just said it was nothing to be concerned about. In 8th grade, that is when everything got really bad. In 8th grade, I had fatigue out of nowhere. Like, I was just so tired, and I would be at school and I just like could not focus on the class because I was so tired. I think I was only going to school like 3 days a week, and I went to doctors and they couldn't ever figure out why I was so tired, why I was so fatigued, why I just wanted to go home and sleep. And they said maybe it's like some sort of CVC type mono or something like that, and they just could never really come up with a good reason as to why I was so tired and fatigued all the time. There was nothing that they could do. I just had to live with the fatigue. I would just come home and, sleep. Then in 9th grade, I had a bunch of anxiety. And I just remember that before school, if I had a lot of tests and stuff that I had to do that day, I would just get anxiety attacks and freak out basically before I had to go to school. So I remember that I was late to school a lot, and I don't know, I just never really felt like myself that year. And then in 10th grade, that is when basically all my symptoms started up. I got 2 concussions within a month of each other. Obviously not a good thing.
I played soccer, like pretty competitive level, and we were expected to do headers.
The first one was the worst one. It like knocked me down to the ground. And then the second one was during a game. I had to go to like a concussion clinic, and they tried to get me back into a normal routine. Concussion headaches, like after you get them, you usually have headaches for really long periods of time. I went to the gym 6 weeks later, like 4 days that I hadn't had a headache, and I went onto the elliptical at the gym. I was on it for 1 minute, and all of a sudden I had this all over body soreness. I was so tired. I couldn't breathe. I had a lot of shortness of breath, and I didn't know why. I expected not to be in the best shape after exercising, but I've gone summers without exercising before, and I've started exercising again, and I could go for like at least 20 minutes, but this was completely different. I've never felt like this way in my life. If you guys have chronic illnesses, you probably understand what I was feeling at the time. And then the next night, all of a sudden I had this really bad chest pain, and I didn't know where it came from. It was kind of like right here. And so I went to the doctor for that. They just said it was costochondritis, that I would just have to wait it out, and they didn't want to give me like pain medicine because they wanted to avoid that as much as possible or something like that. Then it just kept getting worse. That was in December when I first noticed that. So I had a few weeks left of school that I had to make it through, and I did. And finals, I just felt awful. I know that I felt so tired because of finals. Like, stress really causes my symptoms to flare up. Over Christmas break, I was so tired. We went out of town, and I basically just laid in bed the whole time I was there and ate food because that's all I felt like doing. Then in January, school started up again. I was like, okay, I need to go back to school. So I tried going, and that is when basically a ton of weird symptoms came on. I had a lot of headaches. I had like nausea. I would feel really sick. And then I was really tired, and it's kind of like 8th grade again. It was kind of weird and unexpected. And I was trying to go to school, but I ended up having to drop a few classes because I was having this horrible chest pain where I would just be like, I would wake up lying in bed and my chest would hurt so bad. It felt like I was having a heart attack. I didn't know what was going on. An elevated temperature for like 4 weeks, I think, which is really unusual. So I started going to doctors because I started having symptoms. I was itchy all over my body. It felt like I wanted to like rip off my skin. My legs would feel tingly. I'd have shooting pains down my arms. There's just so many symptoms that it's hard to remember all of them, but yeah, it was just not a fun time. All these symptoms were coming out of nowhere, and then obviously I was really tired as well trying to go through school. I had to like I said, I dropped a few classes because I just did not feel well enough to be at school. And I remember one day I almost passed out in school, and I had to get towed in a wheelchair down to the office, and I spent a lot of time in the nurse's office. It was just not a fun time. I started going to doctors to try and figure out what was going on with me. I went to a cardiologist because obviously the chest pain was one of the worst symptoms at the time, and everything looked fine with my heart. So that made me feel better that it wasn't actually a heart attack, even though it felt like one. They said it was probably just like costochondritis or something. They gave me pain meds to help with that, but of course the pain meds didn't help at all. And so I kind of just had to suffer through that pain. I went to a rheumatologist, and they did a lot of tests, which was where I got the Lyme test done, and of course it came back negative, and so did like fibromyalgia because I wasn't having, a lot of joint pain at the time. I mean, my knee hurt. I had joint pain in my knee and my hip, but that wasn't enough to be considered fibromyalgia. And she said I probably just had like some sort of chronic fatigue syndrome. I went to a neurologist because I was having like shooting pains and the numbness and tingling and stuff, and then obviously headaches. Everything just looked fine to her, I guess. But all she said to me, she was like, "You're a normal, healthy girl. Just go and live your life. Go do some yoga. Go on walks." But she didn't understand that I couldn't do that stuff. Like, I couldn't do that stuff. I could hardly get out of my bed. And it was hard even just like getting up and getting ready for school, let alone going to school. Basically, they were making me feel like it was all in my head, that the symptoms that I was experiencing weren't real. And that is an awful feeling because I know what I feel and no one's helping me. You feel like so trapped, and I want to go to school because I want to be around people. I don't want to be isolated, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't live a normal life, and it was really hard. And my mom set up an appointment with a pain clinic at a children's hospital, And so I was excited to go there because I thought maybe that they would come up with a diagnosis for me and figure out what sort of chronic thing that I had, because that's what I figured it to be at this point, because it made sense to me. And I went there, and it was a 4-hour appointment with a bunch of different doctors and psychiatrists and stuff. And at the very end of the appointment, they said to me, "Oh, you have costochondritis. We're going to give you these meds to go on to help with the pain." I'm not a crier. I hardly ever cry, but at that point I lost it because I had been told months ago that I had costochondritis. I told them all my other symptoms, but they didn't believe them or something. They didn't put them together. They didn't even look for a diagnosis. So I guess one of the problems is that I had anxiety in 9th grade, and I had to go on medication for that. I didn't know why I had anxiety, but I did. And I had some depression as well. And I guess they just put that at the top of your chart. And they look at it basically whenever you first have an appointment. And I guess that's what all the doctors thought, was that I had some sort of depression and stuff. They didn't understand that this is a real thing. They just didn't understand that I had all these symptoms and that they were real. So, I don't know. And that I wasn't making them up and stuff. So, then I basically just gave up, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to live with all these symptoms somehow. I don't know. It was a really hard moment. I happened to go to a graduation party. My mom ran into one of her friends there, and her daughter has Lyme disease, and my mom was like telling her my symptoms. She was like, "Oh, maybe she has Lyme disease. You need to go to this doctor and he'll help you guys out." And he was an internal medicine doctor like a few hours away. And I really didn't want to go to that appointment because I was tired of being told that I was crazy, but then I just forced myself to go. And sure enough, he was like, "You have Lyme disease, Bartonella, and you might have Babesia. We'll run some blood tests." And he did like extensive look into my thyroid and found out that I had thyroiditis, which is basically fluctuating between like hyper and hypo, and then eventually it just stays hypo or something. I don't know. I haven't really looked too much up about that. But yeah, he told me that, and it was a great feeling. Like, finally that someone understood that I was experiencing all these symptoms and that they were actually happening to me. That was all the way like in May. I did have to like drop fully out of school because I was feeling way too sick to do it, and more symptoms just kept coming. My doctor told me that the concussions had triggered the Lyme symptoms, that my body just couldn't handle everything at once. So the Lyme and stuff got worse. And yeah, that is part 1 of my Lyme disease story. I will film another video kind of on everything that I've been through since I got that diagnosis, you know, because it's a long journey. It's so sad that so many people go through this. I'm lucky because my age, I'm a lot younger, so my body is going to be able to heal me quicker and more completely. Some people go 15 years without getting a diagnosis, and by then they have so many symptoms that it takes forever to cure the illness. And I just want people to understand how awful this disease truly is, and that it's a real thing, and that people are not making it up, and they're not crazy, and that it can be treated. So thank you guys for watching. I'll put a link to part 2 down below once I make it, and hope you guys have a wonderful day.